Have you ever felt like you're constantly chasing an impossible ideal? Like you have to be perfect at everything: an amazing mom, a dedicated professional, a loving wife, a supportive friend, and never mess up? The truth is that pressure doesn't always come from the outside. A lot of the time, we're the ones putting way too much on ourselves, constantly feeling guilty for not being as good as we think we should be. We live in a world that glamorizes multitasking women and makes us believe we're supposed to handle everything with a smile. That unrealistic expectation just leads to frustration and emotional exhaustion, feeding a harsh inner voice that follows us around every day. But let's be real. Nobody can do everything for everyone all the time without losing themselves in the process. This is your reminder to look at yourself with more compassion and realize that perfection isn't the goal. What I want is to help you deal with that guilt that weighs so heavy and help you accept who you are, a woman who's already doing her best, even if it doesn't always feel like it's enough. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure to be perfect all the time, just know you're not alone, and you don't have to keep living like that. Let's walk this path together and learn how to deal with guilt, and maybe, finally let it go for good. Before we can let go of guilt, we need to understand where it comes from. We're not born feeling like we have to be flawless. That idea gets planted little by little through messages we pick up from society, family, and even from the people closest to us. From a young age, we're taught there's this ideal woman we should be. The one who takes care of everything and everyone without ever complaining, who's always polished, with a spotless house, well-behaved kids, and a thriving career. That perfect woman myth sets us up for failure because it's just not real. And when we fall short of that, the guilt comes creeping in. Besides all the cultural pressure, there are also our personal stories. Maybe you grew up in a home where you had to be the responsible one way too early. Or maybe you were constantly criticized and started to believe that if you weren't perfect, you wouldn't be worthy of love or respect. Each of us has our own history, but so many of us share this deep feeling of never being enough. And let's not forget how social media adds fuel to the fire. Every day, we're hit with posts of women who seem to have it all together: perfect families, perfect bodies, perfect lives. What we don't see is what's happening behind the scenes. The struggles, the insecurities, the hard days. Comparing our real lives to someone else's highlight reel only makes us feel like we're failing. Let's pause and think. How many times have you beat yourself up for not keeping up? For not being as organized as that one friend? For struggling to juggle your career and family without burning out? That kind of self-talk just makes the guilt grow and traps us in a cycle that's tough to break. Here's the thing. We have to stop and realize that these expectations, whether they come from outside or from within, are totally unrealistic. No one can handle everything perfectly all the time, and that's okay. The first step to letting go of guilt is to recognize that it wasn't something you were born with. It was taught. It was built over time. Now that we've unpacked where this guilt comes from, it's time to talk about how it's showing up in your everyday life. Let's dig into that together in the next chapter. Have you ever stopped to think about how much guilt weighs you down day to day? You might not even notice it, but it's there, in every little demand you put on yourself. Guilt does more damage than we give it credit for. It drains your emotional energy, chips away at your self-esteem, messes with your decisions, and even affects how you connect with the people around you. One of the biggest impacts is emotional burnout. When you feel like you're never doing enough, you end up anxious and stressed all the time. How many nights have you stayed up, replaying everything you could have done differently? Maybe you beat yourself up for missing moments with your kids, or for not making that career move you were aiming for. That kind of mental loop only adds to the emotional load we carry. And it doesn't stop there. Guilt also messes with our relationships. When we're constantly pressuring ourselves and feeling like we're not enough, we can become extra sensitive to criticism. Like someone might say, "You look tired," or "Your house is kind of messy today." And it hits like a punch, like proof that we're failing, even if that person didn't mean it that way. Over time, that sensitivity can start to push people away because we begin to believe everyone's judging us all the time. Another big thing is how we constantly compare ourselves to other women. How many times have you looked at someone who seems to have it all together and thought, "Why can't I be like that?" You see a coworker who seems to balance her job and personal life with ease, and suddenly you feel like you're falling short. But here's the problem. That comparison is never fair. We're measuring our messy, real-life insides against someone else's polished outside. When guilt goes unchecked, it ends up limiting the choices we make. We stop taking risks because we're scared to fail, and just add to the feeling that we're not good enough. It's like every decision comes with an extra layer of pressure, and it makes everything harder than it needs to be. If guilt brings so much pain, we need to find healthier ways to deal with it. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how letting go of the need to be perfect can actually set you free. Because the truth is, our humanness, that messy, beautiful imperfection, is exactly what makes us strong and capable of growing. I want you to really think about this. Who told you that you have to be perfect all the time? The truth is, perfection is just an illusion, something we made up in our heads but will never actually reach. And you know why? Because we're human. And being human means messing up, learning, and trying again. How many times have you felt bad about messing up something small? Maybe you forgot an important appointment or lost your temper with your kids during a stressful moment. And then that voice in your head kicks in. I'm a terrible mom, or I should have done better. That kind of constant self-criticism wears us down because we don't allow ourselves to make mistakes. But mistakes are part of life. That's how we grow and learn. Let me give you a real-life example. Imagine your friend made a mistake and feels awful about it. What would you say to her? Probably something like, "It's okay, that happens to everyone." So why don't we talk to ourselves the same way? It's like we have two different standards, one gentle and kind for others and one super harsh for ourselves. One way to start letting go of perfection is by recognizing the unrealistic expectations we carry. Grab a piece of paper and list out all the things you constantly expect from yourself. Stuff like, I should be more patient, I have to handle everything on my own, or I can't ever mess up at work. Then look at that list and ask yourself, does this actually make sense? Are these really your expectations, or ones someone else put on you? When we accept that we don't need to be perfect, we create space for something so much more powerful: authenticity. Making mistakes doesn't make us any less worthy of love or respect, it makes us human. And believe me, that's more than enough. Accepting our humanness doesn't mean giving up or slacking off. It means understanding that messing up doesn't define who we are. Mistakes are part of the growth process. And now that we've talked about that, it's time to take the next step: learning how to deal with our failures in a healthier way. Are you with me? Why are we so afraid of messing up? Maybe it's because we've been taught, for most of our lives, to treat mistakes like failures. But here's the thing, there's a big difference. Making a mistake is part of being alive. Failure only happens when we stop trying. Think of a baby learning to walk. They fall over and over again before they finally take those steady steps. But nobody says they failed just because they fell. Falling is part of the learning. Somewhere along the way, though, we grow up and start believing we're not allowed to fall anymore. And that's when guilt kicks in. The first thing we need to do is separate the mistake from our self-worth. Messing up doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you're human, you're learning, you're living. When something doesn't go the way you planned, instead of beating yourself up, try asking a different question. What can I learn from this? One really helpful tool for quieting self-criticism is cognitive reframing. Here's how it works. When you catch yourself thinking something harsh, pause and ask if there's another way to look at the situation. Like, instead of saying, "I'm terrible at managing my time," try, "Today didn't go as planned, but I can figure out a better way tomorrow." That little shift can totally change how we see ourselves. Another essential practice? Self-compassion. Being kind to yourself means talking to yourself the same way you'd talk to a friend. When guilt starts creeping in, take a breath and say, "I did the best I could with what I had at the time, and that's enough." Don't underestimate the power of those words. They can completely shift how you see yourself. Here's a little practical exercise. Next time you catch yourself being overly critical, stop and write that criticism down on paper. Then, next to it, write down what you'd say to a friend if she were saying those same things about herself. Doing this helps build self-compassion and makes that inner critic a little quieter. Changing how we deal with guilt starts from the inside, but it also has to do with what we let in from the world around us. In the next part, we'll talk about how to filter out outside expectations that weigh us down. Now that we've talked about where our guilt comes from and how it affects our lives, it's time to look at outside expectations. Those pressures that come from other people and often make us feel like we're falling short, even when we're doing our best. Family, friends, social media, co-workers, everybody seems to have an opinion about what we should be doing. But the truth is, most of the time, those opinions don't match what really matters to us. Let's start with something simple. Have you ever felt pressured to show up at every family event? even when you're already completely drained. Like that aunt who insists you come to every Sunday lunch, even though you're desperate for some alone time. Or that friend who always expects you to be the super mom, super wife, or superwoman at work. These are outside expectations, and if we don't filter them, they turn into just one more thing making us feel guilty. The first step to filtering those expectations is figuring out what's yours and what's not. Ask yourself, is this something I really want or something others want from me? Honestly, most people aren't trying to overwhelm us. They just don't know what's really going on in our lives. They don't see how tired we are or how hard we're working just to keep it together. That's why learning to say no is so important. And no, saying no isn't selfish. It's taking care of yourself so you can be your best self for others too. Here's a simple and effective trick. Create an emotional filter. When someone asks something of you or puts an expectation on you, ask yourself, is this really important to me right now? If the answer's no, it's totally okay to say no or ask for help. You don't have to carry everything on your back, and you don't have to say yes to everything, especially when your energy is running low. Here's another example. Let's say you're scrolling through social media and see a mom who looks like she's got it all together. Healthy meals every day, spotless house, extracurriculars with the kids, the whole deal. And then you start thinking, why can't I do all that? But here's the thing, you're seeing a filtered version of her life. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And even more importantly, her life isn't yours. Your story and your challenges are totally unique. Filtering outside expectations is key to protecting our emotional well-being. We need to get better at being picky about what we let in, and more honest about what we actually want and need. Setting healthy boundaries is everything. And most importantly, don't feel guilty for doing it. Now that we've sharpened our external filter, it's time for the next step, building real self-esteem and learning to see our value, no matter what others expect from us. Let's do this together. So far we've talked about where guilt comes from, how to handle mistakes, and how to filter external pressure. Now we're getting to one of the most important parts of the journey, building self-confidence and practicing self-acceptance. A lot of the time, guilt sneaks in because we don't feel like we're enough, and deep down, it's because we don't really believe in our own worth. If we want to break this cycle of guilt and self-criticism, we have to learn to value ourselves and trust our decisions. Sounds simple, but confidence doesn't happen overnight. It's something we build slowly, through small everyday habits. One of those habits is celebrating your wins, even the tiny ones. We're so quick to focus on everything we do wrong that we forget to recognize what we're doing right. How about starting a little gratitude and victory journal? Nothing fancy, just jot down moments like, I went for a walk today even though I was super busy, or I made a healthy dinner even though I was tired. These small celebrations send a message to your brain that says, hey, I got this. Another big part of building confidence is recognizing your strengths, and not just the stuff you do as a mom, partner, or employee. What do you love about yourself outside of those roles? What are your passions, your talents, your unique gifts? Taking time to reflect on that really matters. Maybe you're a great listener. Maybe you're super creative when it comes to solving problems. Or maybe you're the kind of person who just doesn't give up. Whatever it is, don't sell yourself short. The qualities you bring to the table are what make you uniquely you, and it's time to own that. I know it can be hard sometimes, especially when we're so wrapped up in the everyday chaos of life. But instead of beating yourself up when you feel like you're not doing your best, try to remember how far you've already come. You've been through a lot, and that alone is something to be proud of. And if there's something you want to improve, that's okay too. You can do it with the same love and patience you'd offer to a friend. Another key point is the environment you're in. If you're surrounded by people who constantly put you down or expect the impossible, that's going to wear on your confidence. Try to spend time with people who lift you up, who get you, who support and inspire you. And if necessary, take a closer look at relationships that are draining your emotional energy instead of helping you grow. Self-esteem is a lifelong journey, but every step you take towards self-awareness and self-acceptance is a big win. Don't forget, you are enough just as you are. Your worth doesn't need to be measured by what others expect of you. The more you accept and trust yourself, the less power guilt will have over your life, and the more freedom and lightness you'll feel. Now that you've got tools to build your confidence, always remember, change starts from the inside out. The first step is to take care of yourself, without feeling guilty for doing it. If you give yourself permission to be imperfect, you'll start to notice that life feels way more peaceful and enjoyable. We've reached the end of this journey, and if you made it this far, that means you've already taken a huge step toward dealing with guilt and learning to embrace your imperfections. Through these chapters, we've talked about how guilt can creep into our lives quietly and make us feel like we're never enough. But here's the truth: perfection doesn't exist. The road to inner peace begins the moment we accept our humanity, flaws, strengths, and all. You've learned where guilt comes from, and even more importantly, how it no longer has to control you. Owning your imperfections is an act of courage, and when you do that, you start releasing the pressure that's been holding you back. Accepting that we're imperfect makes us more human, more compassionate with ourselves, and allows us to live more freely. When you let go of trying to be perfect, life becomes more real, more authentic. And don't forget, messing up is part of growing. We don't need to be hard on ourselves over every little mistake. We just need to meet those moments with compassion and a mindset for learning. Every single step you take toward accepting yourself matters. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect. The first step is accepting who you already are, with all your imperfections. When you give yourself that space to just be, without guilt, you're creating a life rooted in self-love and peace. So now, I want to invite you to take the next step. Start practicing self-compassion today. Pause for a second and say to yourself, it's okay not to be perfect. That's the first act of love you can give yourself. And if this content helped you, don't forget to hit subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. Tell me what resonated most with you and how you've been handling guilt in your life. Let's walk this path together toward a life of more lightness and more self-acceptance. Just remember, this journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about being you. See you next time.